Yeah.
This is
all right, hello everyone, and welcome to our February 24th Helicon. My name is Britt Allen, and I will be your MC for this evening. Yay! I gratuitously clap for myself. Perfect. Mission statement. Helicon West is a live reading series that brings published local writers to read alongside community members in an open, uncensored forum. In order to promote the voice of every community member and democratic ideals, we honor all levels of skill, ability, and craft. In addition to featuring published authors to give the literary arts more exposure in Cache Valley and its surrounding areas, we invite and celebrate aspiring writers from every walk of life to find and share their voices with us. We are committed to the causes of inclusion, accessibility, and representation in our writing community. I would like to thank our sponsors. We have the Bear River Heritage Area, the Logan Library, Sugar House Review, the Utah Humanities, our matron St. Star Colebrook, and the Cache Center for the Arts for letting us be in this beautiful space tonight. If you would like to read during the open mic portion of the event, you can find our sign-up sheet right here next to the suggestively placed tip jar and coffee, which, if you enjoy the coffee is complimentary, but please do drink it over the hardwood, as these are new carpets and they've asked us just to minimize that risk. Okay, after we hear from our featured reader tonight, we will get as far down the open mic list as time permits. Each open mic reader will have up to 7 minutes before they are politely clapped off. All of our Helicon West events are recorded and then posted to our YouTube channel. If you do not wish to be recorded but would still like to read during the open mic, please make a note by your name when you sign up, or you can just kind of give us one of these right over here. If you are on Zoom and you are interested in reading during the open mic, you can raise your little virtual hand down in, it's either in reactions or participants, I believe. It depends on which version of Zoom you have. And if you don't wish to be recorded, you can shoot us a message and we can turn that off. Okay. Be sure, as well as donating to Helicon West tonight, we have our tip jar. We have a beautiful QR code on our spring flyers and bookmarks, which are free to take as well. Our reader has brought books of her own tonight to sell. You can find them in the back, and I'm sure she would love to sign them for you after her reading. So be sure to buy some of her books. They can also be found online and on the website. And without further ado, I will introduce our reader. A.M. Luzzader. Right, the Lou is higher than I think it is. A.M. Luzzader is a full-time author living in northern Utah who has published 17 books for children, including Hannah Saves the World, A Mermaid in Middle Grade, and Arthur Blackwood's Scary Stories for Kids Who Like Scary Stories. Her books are appropriate for children ages 5 through 12, though the scary books are for mature children only. She has also published 4 books for adults under the name Amanda Luzzader, including the post-apocalyptic series Among These Bones and Creep Factor, a collection of short horror stories. A.M. has sold the foreign translation rights to A Mermaid in Middle Grade to AST, one of the largest book publishing companies in Russia, and the audiobook rights to Tantor Media. She has also sold rights to Deseret Experimental Opera Company to allow Hannah Saves the World to be made into a children's rock opera. Yeah, debuting April 2022. We should meet again and watch that together. A.M.'s books are frequently listed as bestsellers on Amazon. She was selected as the Utah Writer of the Year for 2019-2020 by the League of Utah Writers. A.M. is married to Chad Van Zanten, who assists her by editing her work and drawing illustrations for some of her books. She has 2 sons who are the light of her life, and a cat named Cosette who distracts AM from working on a daily basis. You can find more information about AM Luzzader on Facebook and on her website at www.amluzzader.com. Welcome, AM.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to read today. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to be just reading 2 pieces today. The first one is from my book, Hannah Saves the World. This is a humorous mystery series, and it's about a girl who solves mysteries in her little town, and as she does, she always ends up accidentally saving the world. So the message of this book is really that you can save the world just by doing good in the places where you are. And when I wrote this book, I was thinking about how I often read to my children at night, and I suspected that lots of other parents do as well. And so as I wrote it, I decided to put some Easter eggs for the parents in the story. And so I scattered some science fiction Easter eggs throughout the book. And then my husband, Chad, who's in the back taking a picture, he edits all of my books. And when he saw that I had put some Easter eggs in there, he added a whole bunch more, some that I didn't even understand the reference. But in this first chapter that I'm going to read today, there are at least 8 Easter eggs from sources such as War of the Worlds, a certain movie by George Lucas, Finnegan's Wake, Evil Dead, and Apocalypse Now. So see if you can catch them in this chapter. High above planet Earth, just at the edge of its atmosphere, a sleek and gleaming space cruiser loomed against the starry field of outer space. And on the command deck of this cruiser, there stood 2 alien beings. Some of the humans down on Earth had seen the space cruiser. The aliens had technology to conceal their spacecraft, but it wasn't foolproof. And in fact, the space cruiser had been spotted from Earth no fewer than 50 times that day. It was fully the size of the Empire State Building, and when the invisibility technology wasn't working right, this spacecraft was hard to miss. And so all across the country, reports flooded in from people claiming to have spotted a glimmering UFO, which you surely know stands for Unidentified Flying Object. Mrs. Janet Jellycake of Bug Scuffle, Tennessee called the police and cried, "I think there's a chance that I might have possibly spotted a potential UFO, maybe, at least I think so." Mr. Hank Hijinks of Grover's Mill, New Jersey called the Air Force and in a very stern voice said, "Planet Earth is under attack." Miss Wilhelmina Wigglestone of Goose Pimple Junction, Virginia sent a 20-minute cell phone video to her local TV station, but the footage was so shaky and out of focus, it looked more like 2 kids playing catch with a flashlight on a foggy night in a backyard a mile away. Nothing much resulted from these reports. There are UFO reports all the time, all across the world, even when there are no alien spacecraft visiting Earth. Very few authorities ever take them seriously. Okay, I'm going to stop the story right here and just do a little side note. So the very first book that I wrote and published was called Among These Bones, and it was a post-apocalyptic series for adults. I published the first book in 2018, and the last book in the series was published January 2020. Now remember those dates. The book is about a pandemic. And in the book, there's government conspiracies and forced vaccinations and chips that track where you go. And I published that. The last book came out in January 2020. And then, as you know, COVID. And so then after that series, I wrote this one, Hannah Saves the World, which as you've now seen or heard, I mean, there are UFOs in that book. And a month after I finished writing that, I saw a UFO. And I was driving in my car and I saw a V-shaped black object, very big, moving very fast in the sky. I pulled over and I took a video of this UFO. My husband, Chad, posted it online and it went mini viral. It was viewed 40,000 times. The local newspaper contacted me and interviewed me. I had people contacting me from all around the world asking for my firsthand experience in seeing this UFO. And it actually made the front page of the Herald Journal. I have the newspaper clipping here. And I don't know if you can read what that says. It says, UFO spotted in Valley, turns out to be giant plastic bag. And what had happened is a local high school was experimenting with a weather balloon and had accidentally released it, and it had bent in a weird way in the sky, and so that's why it looked like a UFO when I saw it. But I was contacted by a woman shortly after this, and she ran a support group for people who had been abducted by aliens. And she said to me, you know, you had this alien encounter, would you like to join our group? And I said to her, oh, well, you know, thank you very much, but it turns out it wasn't a UFO after all, it was just a weather balloon. And she said to me, that's what they want you to do. But anyways, my point is, I write a book about pandemic happens. I write a book about UFO happens. So now I am happy to announce I'm going to write a book about a children's author who wins the lottery. Okay, back to the story. The aliens in the space cruiser knew nothing about the reports. Then again, they didn't think of their spaceship as a UFO either. They had no trouble identifying their own flying objects. The aliens knew perfectly well what it was and whom it belonged to. It was an intergalactic space traveler model, THX 1138, which was finally named something that roughly translated into English as the shining vessel that travels so smoothly from star to star. Furthermore, the aliens on board the shining vessel that travels so smoothly from star to star did not consider themselves aliens. They referred to themselves by their names. The first was called Achu, which when properly pronounced sounds very much like a human sneeze. The other's name was Brian, which as it happened was pronounced more or less like we say it on Earth. The point is, Achu and Brian didn't think of themselves as alien invaders. Instead, they thought of Earth as an alien planet, a place they happened to be visiting that day, and they considered all of Earth's humans, animals, and plants as alien life forms. Compared to the humans down on Earth, Achu and Brian were very tall. Their arms and legs were long and slender, their hands resembled that of Earthlings, except their fingers were quite elongated, and each fingertip looked as though it had a big black olive stuck on the end. Their skin was the color of moldy bread, and their eyes looked like enormous black teardrops. Achu and Brian wore long intergalactic robes, which dragged along the deck of the shining vessel that travels so smoothly from star to star, picking up little bits of dust and litter. The robes were so long, Brian and Achu appeared to glide across the deck of the spaceship rather than walk. The two aliens stood gazing at the enormous monitor, which was, to be honest, way too big to even be called a monitor. It covered one entire side of the spaceship and was nearly the size of an Earthling football field. And on this immense screen, Achu regarded our Earth with envious eyes. He tapped one bulbous fingertip thoughtfully on his chin, turned to Brian and said, "Klatu parado nito Earth." Brian replied with, "Earth, Baba Badal Argatak Amina Ron Kanbantan." This was the way they talked. Their language was very different from the languages spoken on Earth, and theirs sounded a bit like the noise of blowing bubbles in milk using a straw, or the sound of walking in thick, deep mud. What Achu said was, "After visiting many planets, I have come to the conclusion that this is the best place for us to construct our vacation dwellings." "Ah, yes," said Brian, "Earth. Perfect distance from the sun, and just a hop, skip, and light speed jump from our home world. Sounds groovy. Should we fly down to the planet's surface and begin planning for construction?" Achu nodded, but then something on the massive monitor caught his large inky eye, and he grimaced. He pointed at the monitor and said, "Alas, there is a problem." "What's up?" asked Brian. "Behold, this planet's atmosphere contains oxygen." "Ah, that's too bad," said Brian, also grimacing. "With all that oxygen, it'd be totally lethal for us to vacation here. Guess we should keep looking, huh?" "Wait a minute," said Achu. He didn't actually say wait a minute, of course, because Achu and Brian had their own system of timekeeping, in which the closest thing to a minute was called a chronoblip. But wait a minute was essentially what Achu meant. "Wait a minute," he said, calling up more information on the vast monitor. "It appears that Earth's atmosphere is only 21% oxygen. That's a relatively small proportion. The rest is mostly nitrogen with small amounts of other assorted gases such as carbon dioxide and neon." "Ooh, neon," exclaimed Brian. "I love the smell of neon in the morning." "Let us fetch the deoxygenator," said Achu, raising one long black olive tipped finger into the air. "It will clear the entire atmosphere of the toxic oxygen, and then we may commence the building of our vacation retreat." "Hey, Achu," said Brian, gazing at the greens and blues of Earth. "Without oxygen, won't the native life forms suffer? Maybe even, die?" "What's that you say?" said Achu, arching a finger above his eye that passed for an eyebrow. "I mean the earthlings and plants and other organisms and stuff down on Earth. What they need the oxygen to, live?" Achu gestured at the monitor again. "Their air is only 21% oxygen. They obviously don't need it too badly." Brian wore an expression that could be difficult to describe in words, but it indicated that he was skeptical, doubtful. Achu blinked a few times and then waved a hand at Brian. "Do not be so sentimental. They're only earthlings. Why, only 10,000 chronospons ago, they weren't even housebroken. Direct the Vogon constructor fleet to Earth at once. I will personally install a configure and activate the deoxygenator to make this planet the perfect place for our friends and family to visit in the summer." "Big planet," said Brian. "Where do you plan to put this gizmo?" "According to my calculations," said Achu, "taking into account the prevailing winds, planetary rotation, density of the atmosphere, and oxygen content, the best possible place would be here." He pointed his long bulbous fingertip at the giant Earth projection, and it zoomed in at a dizzying rate. Immediately, mountains and cities became visible, and trees and streets and houses too, until it settled on one particular quiet little road, which led to a sleepy little town with rows of pretty trees and trim green grass and neat little homes with white picket fences. And alongside this quiet little road, there stood a sign that read, "Welcome to Cardwick." And that is the end of the first chapter, and Cardwick happens to be where Hannah lives. So, as Brittany mentioned in my introduction, this book, Hannah Saves the World. Oh my gosh, you guys, there were pictures I forgot to show you. So Chad, my husband, did illustrate this book. So here is a picture of a space cruiser.
Oh,
And a picture of the alien. This is a chew. Okay, as I was saying, Deseret Experimental Opera Company did purchase the rights to make Hannah Sees the World into a children's rock opera. And the first showing of hopefully many will be April 4th in West Jordan at the Viridian Amphitheater at 5:30. And it's free. So everyone come, and you have plenty of time to buy and read the book and then come see it in a rock opera. And the next story that I'm going to read is from this book, author Blackwood's Scary Stories for Kids Who Like Scary Stories, book 2. When I was a kid, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was one of my favorite books, even though it did give me nightmares. So I wrote, if you know my adult work, I have a soft place in my heart for scary stories. And it started with a children's book, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And so this is my tribute, I guess, to that book. And I'm planning on there being 6 books in this collection. The first one is out, the second one is out, and I'm going to have the third one out next month. And then we'll see when the rest of them come. But this one is called Riders on the Ghost Plane. Slim Forrest was as tired as 10 grizzly bears in winter. He felt like he hadn't had a decent night's rest in years, that it was time to get back on the trail. Slim was an Old West bounty hunter who worked the Badlands, now known as the state of New Mexico. Slim hunted bank robbers, cattle rustlers, train robbers, and horse thieves. He tracked them down, captured them, then turned them in for reward money. It was hard work. Bounty hunters must survive out in the barren wastes in burning heat and bone-freezing cold. There were rattlesnakes, wolves, Gila monsters. A bounty hunter might find a scorpion in his boot in the morning or some other venomous critter. A bounty hunter might fall off his horse and break a leg or an arm or his neck, or the horse itself might fall off a cliff with the bounty hunter in the saddle. And of course, the bounty hunter faced every chance of getting shot dead by an outlaw who did not care to be apprehended. However, bounty hunter was Slim's chosen profession, and he was known throughout the West as one of the best. He was tall and thin with light-colored hair and a droopy mustache. Old Slim had been resting up for a few days in the Old West town of Santa Fe when he saw this headline on the front page of the local newspaper. Cactus Jack robs bank in Albuquerque and escapes. Cactus Jack was a stout, muscular outlaw with piercing green eyes and a beard of red whiskers. He could draw his pistol quickly, his aim was superb, and he rode an enormous black cavalry horse named War Captain. Cactus Jack was one of the most dangerous men in the West. He was also Slim's favorite outlaw. Slim had captured Jack several times over the years and turned him in for reward money. The first time Slim caught Jack was in Dodge City, Kansas. He'd also caught Jack in Wyoming and Nevada. But Jack had gotten away from Slim more times than he'd been captured by Jack. He'd given Slim the slip once in Texas and twice in Wyoming, and Cactus Jack had even gotten away from Slim right there in Santa Fe. And so the score was 3-4 in favor of Cactus Jack. The newspaper story reported that a deputy sheriff in Albuquerque had shot Cactus Jack as he fled from the bank, but that Jack had escaped anyway. Albuquerque wasn't far from Santa Fe, and Slim had a good idea about where Jack was heading. Whenever Jack robbed a bank, he often took his loot deep into the Badlands to hide out for a few months. Slim even knew where in the Badlands he might find Jack. It was a place known as the Plain of Ghosts. This was an especially vast and barren place. Many who entered never returned. There was hardly any fresh water there and only a few skinny jackrabbits to eat. There were endless sand dunes where riders could get lost and treacherous salt marshes where horses could get stuck. It was said that the ghosts of dead outlaws and gunfighters roamed endlessly over the Plain of Ghosts. Slim wasn't sure he believed in the ghost stories, but everyone knew the Badlands were strange. The blinding sun played tricks on the eyes and brain. Starvation and thirst could drive even the toughest riders to hallucinate. Who knows, thought Slim, maybe there really are ghosts out there. But Slim was sure that Cactus Jack was hiding on the Plain of Ghosts so that no one would follow him there. If Jack thinks some old ghost stories are going to keep me from chasing him, Slim told himself he better think again. Even though Slim was dog-tired, he saddled up his horse, Shadowfoot. Slim and Shadowfoot had been together for more years than Slim could remember. The horse was tall and brown. Shadowfoot was almost as thin as Slim himself and was accustomed to long trips on the range. Soon they rode out of Santa Fe. Ghosts or not, Slim was determined to catch Cactus Jack. He didn't even know or care how much the reward would be. I'm going to even the score, Slim muttered to himself. Slim rode west for 3 days without seeing a single trace of Jack. There were no tracks in the sand, no campfire smoke in the sky, and not even a broken branch of sagebrush that Slim might follow. It was hard riding. Days in the Badlands were blistering hot, and at night it was freezing. The rocky wasteland seemed to stretch out forever. But Slim was used to it. The heat and cold didn't bother him. He didn't need much to drink or eat either. If he ever ran low on water, he knew how to follow the small desert birds to find hidden springs and creeks. He would eat rattlesnake meat if he had to. Shadowfoot was likewise tough. Slim had seen Shadowfoot eat cactus needles when he couldn't find any grass. It seemed like the old horse could walk forever. On the third day, Slim spotted something moving far away on the desolate plain. At first, it was just a shadowy speck. Slim blinked the salty sweat from his face and studied it. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, but he couldn't tell if the ghostly object was Cactus Jack riding War Captain or if it was just an antelope or lone wolf. Whatever it was, it moved quickly, but didn't seem to raise any dust. It shifted and shimmered. Slim admitted it might be a desert mirage, but it was the only movement he'd seen in 3 days, so he followed it. On the 5th day, Slim and Shadowfoot followed the mysterious speck until it was too dark to see. Then Slim pulled the saddle and blanket off Shadowfoot and laid them on the cold rocky ground for a bed. He would have liked to build a fire. The nights were so cold. Frost formed on the cactus and sagebrush each morning. However, if Slim really was following Jack, a campfire would be a dead giveaway. So Slim lay down on the horse blanket, rested his head on the saddle, wrapped himself in a wool poncho. But just as his eyes were fluttering shut, he saw something. Campfire, he hissed. Actually, it was just a tiny flicker of light in the darkness. Slim knew it might only be moonlight reflecting on a puddle of salty mud or a jet of marsh gas set aflame earlier that day by the sizzling sand. But of course, he hoped that Jack had lit a fire. Slim stood, rubbed his eyes, and peered at the quavering light. It was miles away, but Slim was sure it must be a campfire. With a low whistle, Slim signaled for Shadowfoot. The loyal horse came to him instantly. Slim put the blanket and saddle back on the horse, trying to keep his eyes on the tiny point of light. Then he climbed on and spurred the horse into the darkness. With only a little moonlight to see by, they rode slowly. If Slim wasn't careful, he might ride Shadowfoot into a gully or over an unseen cliff. Easy, partner, Slim whispered to the horse. The blazing light grew larger as they got closer. Slim even caught the faint odor of burning sagebrush. When he judged the fire to be a mile away, he reined Shadowfoot to stop and climb down. Stay right here, partner, Slim whispered. He patted the horse on the neck. You stay here and be real quiet. The horse lowered its head as if to say he understood. Slim patted up the horse once more and crept into the darkness, circling the camp so that he could approach from downwind. If War Captain caught Slim's odor on the breeze and started acting nervous, Jack would know something was up. After an hour of sneaking silently through the shadows, Slim came close enough to see the coals of the softly glowing campfire. He thought he could even feel the heat of the flames, and he saw Cactus Jack. This was the moment when everything could go wrong. The snap of a twig underfoot or a glint of moonlight on a buckle could give Slim away. This outlaw wasn't Thackeray, the safecracker who could break into any bank vault but barely knew how to ride a horse. And it wasn't mean Texas Pete, who had one of the quickest draws in the West but couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. This was Cactus Jack. Jack sat on the ground, leaning against his saddle. He'd taken off his boots and gun belt, which lay in a heap by his side. Jack's legs were crossed at the ankle, and he wiggled his toes in the heat of the campfire. War Captain nibbled the dry desert grass nearby. Slim felt slightly disappointed that Jack had let his guard down. With his ankles crossed, Jack would be slow to get up on his feet. With his boots off, it'd be tough for Jack to make a getaway. And if Jack reached for his gun belt, well, it was likely he grabbed one of his boots instead of his pistol. But then Slim was overcome with sudden fear. What if Jack were only pretending to relax? What if Jack were trying to lead Slim into a trap? Slim crouched in the shadows of Jack's campfire and slowly and silently drew his pistol. Then he aimed the pistol at Jack and reemerged from the firelight. For a few long moments, the outlaw and the bounty hunter stared at each other across the fire. Then Jack said, "Howdy, Slim." "Howdy, Jack." Jack didn't reach for his gun. He didn't move. He just said, You found me. I usually do, said Slim. Jack smiled. I'm taking you in, Jack. Now? Asked Jack. It's dark, Slim, and cold. Why don't you sit down by the fire? Slim smiled, but kept his pistol pointed at Jack. Throw me your gun belt first, nice and easy. Jack looked at his gun belt. It was rolled up at his side. He shrugged, picked it up, and calmly tossed it across the fire. It landed at Slim's feet. Slim sat down, resting his back against a rock. We'll go in the morning then, he said, lowering the pistol and stretching out his legs. You say so, said Jack. What do you mean by that? Asked Slim. How long have we known each other, Slim? Asked Jack. Mused Slim, smoothing his mustache. First time I took you into custody was 1870. We go way back, don't we? Said Jack. Firelight twinkled strangely in his eyes. Remember that shootout we had in Santa Fe? Of course I do, said Slim. Back in 78. I got the drop on you from atop the roof of the general store. Yep, said Jack. But I got away, remember? I ran into the horse stables and snuck up behind you. Slim frowned. Well, that ain't the way I recollect it. It was quite a while ago, admitted Jack. Why'd you come out this way anyhow, Jack? Asked Slim. You knew I'd find you. Yeah, said Jack, I reckon I did. But it's real good to see you again, Slim. Slim chuckled and said, you seem to forget we got us a 5-day ride back to Santa Fe starting tomorrow morning. We'll be seeing a whole lot of each other. Jack gazed at the fire as if he hadn't heard. What year is it, Slim? He asked. What do you mean? I mean, tell me the year. Why, replied Slim, what difference does it make? Just tell me, said Jack testily. Well, now, Slim began, this here is 1860. Then he paused, no, that can't be right. It's 1870. He paused again and stroked his long mustache thoughtfully. It's 1886, Slim, said Jack softly. That shootout in Santa Fe was 10 years ago. And guess what else? I won. You lost. Slim frowned and thought about this. Then he closed his eyes and nodded slowly, as if remembering something he'd forgotten before, something he promised he wouldn't forget again. He slid his pistol back into its holster. I never made it out of Santa Fe alive all them years ago, did I? Whispered Slim. Nope, said Jack. But like I said, it's mighty good seeing you again. You too, Jack. Just then, Shadowfoot materialized from the night. Still riding old Shadowfoot? Asked Jack. Yep, replied Slim. I reckon we'll get back on the trail. Why don't you stay a while, Slim? Said Jack. Well, all right then, said Slim. They spoke no more. They only stared at the campfire as the flames burned low. Slim Forest and Shadowfoot gradually vanished, becoming one with the black night around them, and only Jack and War Captain remained. Drawing by Chad. Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. I just want to listen to you like read the rest of that book. Like I was kind of lost for a moment. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Another hand for AM. All right, we've got 3 folks down on the open mic. Does anyone else feel inspired? Chad does. Brittany does too, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna throw my name down too. Anyone else? Going once, going twice, just kidding. I'll be back, I'll do this again. Okay, then our first 3 open mic readers will be Ronald Jensen, Jay Payne, and Star Colbrook. All right. Hi, Ron.
Trojan, when you left it and you did it back, you never knew It was the last time we'd see you. Before you leave, this monologue, go to the next where there's no stand. The 7th of me, with your smile, it made us feel good for more than just a while. Now come you, your hints, kids, who went before you. You left us a little too soon, now you have too. It's so hurt to have you go. Remember that. Love you so. June 9th, 2020, year ago today, my friend Julie died with a family by his side. It's outside her birthday. If we were innocent, she would have turned 14, but life is now done. Love each of the families and have a nice day. Remember me then, in their own ways.
I just have one poem tonight. I tried to write a ghazal, which is an Arabic form written in couplets, and each couplet kind of stands as its own poem, like a bead on a necklace. So this one's titled Snowfall. If the leaves fall early, would the first snowfall come sooner? I long for a freeze and snowfall. At 4, I trusted deep powder because I could never fall far. I felt safe up to my knees in snowfall. Storms are fleeting, impermanent like my body. They pass, these brief moments of snowfall. Even during the harshest blizzards, I am amazed at how hard it is to seize a single flake of snowfall. I fear I will die abruptly, plummeting into nothingness like a meteor, but I want to descend with ease like snowfall. Winter is an end in itself. There are also ends in winter. Jay, please don't forget that it all melts, this beloved snowfall.
Those were nice. Thank you for those poems, Ron and Jay. Amanda always, AM always inspires me so much. I always can find a way to copy her words down in my book and make them my own. I won't read them tonight, but they're. You want me to?
Yeah.
I'll just read them. It was fully the size and glimmering, quite possibly a UFO, so shaky, out of focus, never taken seriously, like a children's book author who wins the lottery. Space aliens view Earth from a smooth gliding ship, way too big to hop, skip, and jump. Earth too far away to do otherwise. And besides that, her husband there. So I've been reading his book on fly fishing the Bear River watershed, essays and exceptional misadventures. And also I'll read you a journal entry that I jotted down one day, and then I'll read you another journal entry, but I turned it into a letter. Well, it was a letter, but it was in my journal. And so I kept fixing it. So it kept getting really messy. And so I didn't read that one. I actually typed it up so I could read it for you all. So 12/17/2021 journal entry. I'm slowly and gratefully and admirably reading Chad Van Zanten's On Fly Fishing the Bear River Watershed, Essays and Exceptional Misadventures, the title of which is true. Yes, but there is so much more to the writing, the research, the scintillating and sometimes horrific history of human behavior, the ongoing failure of the prevailing culture to respect the land, water, and air, the indigenous people and plants and wildlife, and also the kind-hearted, happy-spirited, conscientious, caring people whose stories are sprinkled liberally through the chapters. I'm on chapter 5, Massacre at Boa Ogai, cringing at the terrible violence of our past, weeping for the beauty of what our predecessors destroyed, marveling at the clarity and beauty of my friend Chad's writing. This is the letter. Seems weird. Is this okay?
It's good.
Okay. Dear Chad, Monday, December 20th, 2021. Dear Chad, I've been saving your fly fishing the Bear River watershed for my most peaceful mornings when I'm rested and clear-minded, because your writing is so good that I don't want to miss a single nuanced metaphor, masterful understatement, or mirthful provocation. I love the way you so smoothly work in the cultural implications of Bear River water use, the history and geology of the various areas along the Bear, its lands and tributaries, and the way you serve up those generous pie wedges of climate change right in the middle of the feast. This morning, I delighted in your poetic Dear John letter to February, which made me smile in deep agreement and with admiration for every sexy, colorful, tongue-in-cheek, intimate assertion about those dreaded jam tips. What fun, this chapter. Yesterday, I marveled at your bold and compassionate treatment of the history we've finally come to know about the Bear River Massacre. You've done a fabulous job of laying out the parallels between the intended eradication of native wildlife and that of the indigenous people along the Bear. I sense that you are heartsick, as I am, over the barren and sterile results of our country's ongoing land and water massacre. The day before yesterday, I was fully immersed in the chapter A Certain Desolation, reliving the terrible years I spent in meetings and hearings on water compacts, acre feet, storage, and use for uses. Your gently humorous prose style, prolific vocabulary, and fine-tuned knowledge about the doublespeak of profit-seeking water grabbers really brings home that whole Save the Narrows era of my life. Yes, I know, I'm gushing like the river used to before the dams took its spirit, but I can't help it. I'm unendingly pleased that you're churning out books the way I imagined you would from the time you became a regular reader at Helicon West. I'd listen to you read in that droll practiced voice of a curmudgeon, which you totally are not, and I'd picture you at book signings on bestseller lists, though I selfishly wanted to keep you all to myself here in this little literary corner of Cache Valley, this place I love so much. Anyway, I'm done praising for now. I've got a physical therapy appointment for my bum shoulder. I need to get breakfast for the 3 R's, those pandemic cats, River and Rosie, and the new border Aussie rooster, who, by the way, got himself neutered today. Life is so good when there are good books to look forward to, rivers to love, writers to adore, and furry friends to snuggle up with while reading. Sincerely, your fan, Star. And how would it be to have 2 famous authors in your household? I mean, I have my niche and he writes stories once in a while, but mostly he doesn't do that kind of stuff because otherwise I'd be too jealous. I don't know how you 2 live with each other. And yet you do, and you love each other and you help each other and you're gorgeous together. And man, we're so lucky around here, aren't we?
Speaking of the lucky couple, our next 2 readers will be, Chad's the one in the couple. Chad will be our next featured reader, or open mic reader. Math words. Our next 2 readers will be Chad, then myself, then did anyone else get the bug? On Zoom, you could raise your virtual hand if you wanted. I'm sorry, Zoom, there's only one of you tonight, so obviously I'm talking to you, but no pressure, Ashley. That's what it says. I mean, it really could be anyone, but. Okay, then Chad, then myself, and then if no one else gets the itch, we will close thereafter.
How's that? Hello, Zoom. Hi, Ashley.
That was great, Star. Thank you so much. I got a little bit overwhelmed with that. And I wanted to add my thanks to Amanda's for everybody who came tonight. We were a little worried everyone's going to be at home freezing or isolating or whatever. I'm going to do stuff my mask because for people with facial hair, masks are really just a device to move facial hair from your skin to your mouth.
You're here.
So I'm going to read something from that book because I was going to read it at the commemoration, the Diamond Jubilee, the 150th anniversary of Helicon West.
Yeah.
And there wasn't time. So in the book, there is a chapter about dams, which are kind of controversial. They were kind of necessary at one time, and then we've kind of rethought them, and we don't like them as much, but it's difficult to remove them. So there's this chapter that has two parts. One is about a dam on the Bear River that got removed up by Grace, called the Cove Dam. That's the first part of the essay. And then the second part is about the Oneida Narrows Dam, which centers largely around Star. And I was going to read this at the commemoration. She didn't say anything, but she's in the book too, which necessarily, absolutely necessarily, the human history of the Bear River includes her as a player, you know. I mean, perhaps not as monumentous as, you know, the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone, but she's in there. And I really was glad that I could write it down. I don't know that it's written down anywhere else except newspaper articles and stuff. So this is the second part of an essay called The Tale of Two Dams. And again, we've kind of talked about a dam that got removed. It was pretty cool. And then another dam that we're going to talk about on the Bear River, here in the Bear River watershed where we're all sitting and standing. So coming down the essay, and so the first of the two dams in this tale is one that no longer exists. The second dam is one conceived by the Twin Lakes Canal Company, proposed for construction on the Bear River in Idaho in the early 2000s. If approved, it would be the first major new dam on the Bear River since the 1920s. There could not have been many people alive who'd witnessed such an event, and at first the proposal received little attention. That didn't last. The justification for the dam was not preposterous. TLCC claimed they need more water for their customers. Claire Boson, TLCC's president, said the project would also generate electricity, strengthen the local economy, provide recreation just as good as the river ever had. He even promised to transmit the water in pipes rather than wasteful open canals. It's not just good for Twin Lakes Canal Company, Boson burbled. It's good for the entire county. In 2006, this seems like just a little while ago, but 2006 is a long time ago. In 2006, TLCC filed documents with FERC for preliminary permission to erect the dam, and a year later applied to the Idaho Department of Water Resources for water rights to fill it up. However, now that the proposal was public, opposition was immediate and strenuous. Evidently, nobody cared about enriching the local economy or the virtues of piped irrigation. The bone of contention was the proposed location. The Oneida Narrows section of the Bear River, a picturesque canyon where 5 miles of river flowed over boulder-strewn substrates between scenic cliff walls and pockets of verdant meadow. Anyone been there? Oneida Narrows? Locals were hopelessly in love with the place, and not just fly anglers. The Narrows held big browns and rainbows ranging from 16 to 22 inches, but apparently inner tubing down the river was the activity most protesters were really desperate to preserve. The Bear River was already crammed with dams. Cutler Dam was 40 miles downstream from the proposed site, and there were no fewer than 4 major dams within 40 miles upstream. In fact, the nearest dam was only 5 miles upstream, Oneida Reservoir. The water in TLCC's new dam would rise practically to the spillway of the old one. I first heard about the controversy from my friend Star Colebrook. Sprightly and petite, Star was an unreformed hippie boomer with the punk rock bohemian flamboyance of a singer in a folk rock band. Tattoos, spiky hair, alarming accumulations of jewelry. A poet and protege of Ken Brewer, Star wrote expressive verse about the legends, scandals, and waterways of southeastern Idaho. She was also a native of Preston, the Idaho town just miles from the Narrows, where she had probably tubed more than anyone. Starr said she'd once counted 127 people lazily floating down the Narrows during a single Friday afternoon. Many groups rose up to fight the proposed dam: Bear Lake Watch, Bear River Watershed Council, Great Salt Lake Keeper, Greater Yellowstone Coalition, Idaho Rivers United, and Trout Unlimited. But STAR's Preston-based grassroots group, the Oneida Narrows organization, led the charge. STAR's argument was simple. The Oneida Narrows was one of the last unspoiled, free-flowing sections of the Bear, and it would be immoral to allow Claire Bosa to drown it. At every protest rally, in every petition, she repeated it: the last free-flowing section of the Bear. It was her battle cry. It was also completely misleading. In reality, most of the Oneida Narrows had been underwater for nearly 100 years. Beneath a 7-mile-long Oneida Reservoir, the river running through the remaining 4 miles of the Narrows was not free-flowing. It was a tailwater of the Oneida Narrows, of the Oneida Reservoir. And the fly fishing there was fantastic, as it usually is in tailwaters, in the water directly downstream from a dam. The fly fishing was fantastic, but after exiting the Narrows, the Bear flowed brown and sullen through 40 miles of hardcore ag land before terminating at Cutler Reservoir, arguably the most impaired waterway in the watershed. You'd never want to inner tube down a free-flowing Bear River. It would be treacherous and mercurial, its channel migrating, hydrograph whipsawing between deafening springtime flows of 10,000 CFS and droughtish trickles that might not even sustain an antelope herd. But even though the idea of a free-flowing river at Oneida Narrows was a myth, it actually made TLCC's proposal more poignant. It was as if the developers would not be happy until the entire river was dammed and developed. In 2007, Starr and her partner, Mitch Butterfield, began an unremitting assault on TLCC and Claire Boson. Starr outmaneuvered them in the press. She outorganized them in Preston. She testified at hearings, filed objections, organized rallies, read her poetry to crowds, and encouraged everyone to join the struggle. This went on for 5 years. In a single month, she collected 1,748 signatures on a petition opposing the dam. An online petition collected almost 800 more. This in a county with a total population of just 12,000. It seemed like public opinion was dead set against the dam. When Mitch and I first created the petition, Starr told me, we took it around to the Preston Night Rodeo and people practically tore it out of our hands to sign it. In 2012, again, this is like a couple of years ago, right? No, it's like a long time ago. In 2012, Claire Boson was still expressing confidence that he'd win the day, but sometimes he seemed a little rattled. And I've never heard him speak, but I kind of imagine kind of this voice. Our company has spent over $22.5 million on studies that were required by the Fish and Game and Trout Unlimited and so on to study the fish and the birds and the bats and the bees and the rabbits and the snails and the deer and elk, moose and eagles and anything else you can think of. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? I see his picture a lot, but. In October 2012, the Idaho Department of Water Resources denied TLCC's water right application, meaning TLCC now had no way to fill the reservoir, even if FERC approved its construction. But Claire Boson filed the full dam construction application with FERC anyhow, which proved that the dam was a foregone conclusion all along, a pre-wired backroom deal. Starr said, you get a final document that says you won, but the victory is very tenuous. If anyone can make money, they'll find a way to get around that last denial. Another 4 years passed before the final blow landed. In 2016, FERC rejected TLCC's application to construct the dam. There was no pre-wiring after all. The fight was over. According to FERC's terrifyingly thorough environmental impact statement, there were numerous reasons for the rejection, but it came down to TLC's inability to, quote, adequately offset the adverse effects of constructing and operating a new major hydroelectric project on a currently scenic river in an undeveloped canyon with remarkable recreational, geological, and wildlife values and public access.
Yeah.
Not even the federal government could stand to inundate a place with such fabulous inner tubing. And this is a quote from Starr, and I'll stop right here. We cried and laughed and scoffed at the would-be dammers, which is a great term because it kind of rhymes with scammers. We cried and laughed and scoffed at the would-be dammers and wrote poems, said Starr. We floated the river and dreamed of the river and fell in love with the river over and over again.
Okay. I also pulled off my mask to read. Really, but like, isn't that funny? We don't, like, we unmask right here, but this is the part that comes closest to our mouth. I don't know. I'm gonna think about this later when I'm trying to sleep, probably. But
It's okay, it isn't breathing back on us when we get up after.
that's true, and I'm not gonna lick it.
Yeah.
So okay. This is a good talk.
Shoot yourself.
Yeah, so I was really inspired by Amanda's reading. Reminded me a lot of like, just like the sass and the underlying like the underlying jokes and tones of like Kurt Vonnegut, right? And Douglas Adams. I was thinking of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Thank you. Which is a very sweet book. And those are also two authors I kind of held in mind as I wrote this really long short story last November. So I will just time myself and read. Oh yeah, it was still timing my dinner. I will just time myself and read the first 7 minutes of it. Story rode her hot pink bike with white tires and sparkling tassels in tight circles around the living room at 5 years old, a stuffed bulldog in the basket. She was a winter solstice baby. Oh my God, I'm so cliche. She was a winter solstice baby, and it was too icy outside to take her birthday present for a proper ride around the cul-de-sac. Having not expected a bike, Story wasn't disappointed, but thrilled, even stuck and cramped inside. The stuffed dog was the worst part of her birthday so far. She'd asked very clearly and repeatedly for a real one, but this brown fuzz was perched on the seat of her new bike when she came into the living room that morning instead. She couldn't hold that against the dog himself, though, as it wasn't his fault he couldn't play back and was probably doing the best he could at being her birthday puppy. Story would keep him, but she would also keep her fingers crossed for Christmas. Story's parents, however, had no intention of getting their oldest daughter an animal of any shape or size. They were kind but flawed people with backstories of their own, young parents of 3 girls, upper lower class, which is to say they had a rented roof over their head, but no savings to speak of. Like most parents, Stories could have done better, but for the most part, the hurts they did were indirect and fueled by the things they didn't say or do, as opposed to horrible things they said or did. Story was very lucky to get a bike from her parents that year, especially with a birthday so close to Christmas and 2 younger sisters that her parents also wanted to buy gifts for. The stuffed dog on the bicycle seat was a last-minute addition that Story's father picked up with his nightly 6-pack just the day before. In truth, the stuffed dog, the bicycle, and Story's father's beer had all been paid for by her grandparents, her mother's parents. You'll see them again soon, but for now, know that although Story's grandparents were discouraged by their youngest daughter's decisions, Story's mother being the youngest of 8 children, they loved her and their grandchildren very much. They didn't follow up closely with the money they gave Story's mother, but they visited often to see for themselves that everyone was staying fed and well, bringing a meal with enough leftovers when they came. Again, Story's grandparents were stern, but good, reliable relatives. Story's parents were unstructured people who did the best they could with their buckets of flaws, but this story is for Story, so let's return to the little girl on training wheels getting dizzy in the living room. Story rode her hot pink birthday bike around and around the living room floor, a room which was not as large as her activities would suggest, a stuffed brown bulldog bobbing along in the basket. Her thin hair was unbrushed and ratted, still in footy pajamas that had the footies cut off to make room for her growth. Her 2 younger sisters kept to the perimeters, bouncing with thumbs in their mouths against the back of the ratted couch, both summer children that would be 3 and 1 years old the next year, one with the footies still attached to their pajamas. Though their brains were still soft and boring, they instinctively recognized the danger that their pack leader presented, mounted gleefully upon her pretty wheeled machine. It's not that Story was a bully, though she certainly would have grown up to be one if the events herein hadn't happened to her. but she was an unruly little girl who thought very protagonistically of herself. Being her mother's first child and very much wanted, she was also very much overheld and coddled and praised as an infant, a condition today known to cause republicanism. Without the science yet to dissuade Story's mother from her well-intentioned but over-loving ways, Story developed the expectation of constant high praise. Or maybe it was the universal karma heaped upon a child with such a brazen name. Either way, Story would not have slowed that hot pink white wheeled bike with a stuffed pup, growing nauseous in the basket for either of her sisters, not even the one with the footies still attached, not even if both had fallen to the floor together. Story especially would not have braked for them on her birthday, not with her hot pink high of being 5 years old on the winter solstice of 1999. There was nothing else to do that day as far as Story was concerned. As I'm sure you've imagined, this circular enthusiasm couldn't go on for much longer without some form of catastrophic intervention, presumably of the bruising kind. And you would be correct, but probably still not imagining the fallout. Around Story's 10th lap, her parents lost the pittance of early morning enthusiasm they had summoned when their oldest daughter shrieked with birthday glee just after 6 a.m. When their daughters had their backs turned, the youngest two rocking over the back of the couch, watching their sister and their sister spinning about once more, they took a small step backward through the doorway to the kitchen and shrank from sight around the corner, waiting to exhale until they heard the rubber wheels keep churning the squelching boards beneath them without interruption. The daughters hadn't taken note of their departure, and the sweetly flawed, tired, and young parents exhaled together, though they did not notice one another. Story's father opened the door of the fridge as soon as the coast felt clear, pulling out an unopened 32-ounce blue can, taking a deep pull, then putting it back and closing the door as he bit back a belch. Story's mother, not a fan of beer, eyed him from the corner of her vision, wondering if today was the day she should say something, and then realizing, of course not, it was their daughter's birthday, and such a sentimental man would definitely want to make a scene over what she had to say. So her lips stayed thin and shut while Story's father took his swig and carefully avoided looking his wife in the eye as he did so. In short, the parents were not watching. This created the perfect opening in the cosmos, right where a cloud of erratic joy energy, I'm a scientist, obviously, where a cloud of erratic joy energy whipped up by the cyclone of Story and her bike met bone-deep adult disappointment, whipped up by the belch in Story's father's throat. A combination that could rip a hole just about anywhere at any time, but was especially ripe and ready to burst through on the winter solstice, extra especially so near to a solstice child. Oh, well, with the northern hemisphere tilted 23.4 degrees away from the sun, 23 and nearly half of another before it thought better of it. I'm missing a no. 23 things slipped through the rift into Story's living room that day. And we'll stop right there. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. Let's give one more round for A.M. Luzzader. And before I let you all go, oh, we've got it. Is that an applause or is that a raised hand?
Oh.
I think it was an applause. That's okay, Ashley, we got you. So before we let go to drink coffee on the nice wood floors over that way, next time, our next Helicon will be on Thursday, March 10th, featuring the writing group called Sean's Front Room. And when I asked him for a bio, this is what he sent, and it's so cute, and so I'm just going to read the whole email. Hello. I have drafted a few things, but nothing that quite lives up to our incredible group. I know that's so cheesy. Here's an effort. Sean's Front Room group was formed in response to the creative burnout that so many have experienced over the course of the past few years. We meet twice a week, twice a month to gather around a prompt and write together. When we share our work together, we have 4 essential agreements. 1, all are invited to share, but no one is required to. 2, we assume all work that's shared is fiction to provide the writer distance from their work. 3, what we share in the writing group stays between us, unless we're reading it at Helicon West. 4, we welcome feedback, but we focus on helping the writer see what's working well in their piece. Love, Sean. So to hear Sean and his writing group, come back on March 10th. And in the meantime, stay safe and well. Anderson. And then you hit stop recording first. Nope.
Nope, no.
Don't end the meeting
No, I'm
yet.
not gonna end the meeting. I would never do that. Stop repeating stuff.